Welcome everybody to Maine's Busy Beavers. We'll be getting started in about 2 minutes. We're just gonna let a couple more people get logged in. All right, welcome everybody to Maine's Busy Beavers. We're gonna now go down to Jade, who is at the Maine Wildlife Park in Gray. There we go.
Sorry, I was still muted.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Jade, and I'm an educator for the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. And today we're at the Maine Wildlife Park here in Gray, which is a part of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife here in Maine. And at the park, we have many different types of native Maine species. So we have black bears and moose, different raptors, snakes, turtles, bobcats, and many other small mammals as well. And all the animals that are here are not able to live in the wild anymore. They're all non-releasable. Some of them are orphans, some of them were injured, and in some cases they were even illegal pets that were then human dependent. So they live here because they can't live in the wild on their own. And if you want to learn more about the wildlife park, you can go to mainewildlifepark.com to read more and see more about our different animals here at the park. Today, we're going to learn about Maine's busy beavers, and we're going to talk about some different beaver adaptations, how these animals change their environment, and a little bit about their history too. And we're here at the beaver exhibit, so hopefully she'll swim around and say hi also. So beavers are able to drastically change their environment. They have different physical and behavioral adaptations that help them do this. And most of those adaptations that are both physical and behavioral complement each other. So we'll talk about each of these. And a beaver in general is a very large rodent, and they are designed for living in wetland habitats. They have been around for millions of years, and the ancient species of beavers were much larger than today's beavers. Today, they are about 55 pounds is an average beaver size, sometimes more and sometimes less. And beavers still have a lot of this same physical and behavioral adaptations that help them survive and care for their young. And some of their physical adaptations that help them, like their strong teeth, their fur, their feet, and other features that allow them to survive in wetland habitats. And they also have certain behaviors that help them survive. They have very good communication skills, such as slapping their tails as a sign of danger. They also dam up running water that they hear, which helps lead to a larger and better habitat for them. And they work as a family to raise their young and cooperate in that parent unit. And all of these adaptations are characteristics of a beaver that allow it to better survive and care for their young in those wetland habitats. So the beaver is Maine's largest rodent, and beavers can live in a variety of different habitats. So they can live in streams, rivers, small and large lakes, wetlands, and marshes. But no matter what habitat they're living in, they need to have a combination of water and forested space. So the next picture that we have is a young beaver. Sorry, I think it's frozen or something. There we go. So this is a young beaver that was here at the park. It was non-releasable, it was orphaned, and it was injured. So we're gonna talk a little about beaver young and families. So beaver young, they stay with their parents until they're 2 years old. And that 2-year mark is when they're sexually mature. And that is when they can leave their family to start their own family. But don't worry, they have learned everything that they need from their parents and are armed with great adaptations to go off on their own. So we're gonna look at some of the different physical adaptations, starting with this beaver skull. So we really want to look at these teeth. They're this orange color because they are enriched with iron. And the iron in their teeth makes them really strong. And these teeth are always growing. So they're very sharp. And if we look closely, they're almost like a chisel shape. So this front part that's colored orange is the iron enriched part. And it grows more slowly and wears down slower than the back part here, the white part. So it makes this nice pointed chisel here from the different ways that they wear down. And they need to use these to chew on trees. So they need to have really strong teeth. If us humans tried to chew on trees, we would probably break our teeth. So they have this iron enriched adapted tooth for chewing on trees. And beavers get the iron from plants. They're herbivores, so they don't eat any meat. They have to get their iron from greens like the leaves and twigs and things that they would eat off of the trees. And here at the park, we give the beaver a lot of browse. That's what we call the parts of trees that we feed to the animals here that eat the leaves and twigs and everything like the beaver does. So we give her that browse, and we also give her a lot of different veggies. So she gets a salad every day too with veggies to help supplement that iron that she needs in her diet. So here she gets spinach, and that's another thing that even for people, it's another plant that we can use to get iron in our diet also. So she gets leafy greens like spinach and kale to help keep her teeth healthy and strong. But how do these beavers know what to eat? So they learn that from their parents. They watch them go and harvest different types of trees, and they watch them use their teeth and their hands to hold and eat that browse and aquatic vegetation.
Video seems to have frozen, Jade. If you could just hold on 1 second. Let me see if we can fix that real quick. There we go, and we're back.
Okay. Was I talking about how they're eating?
Yes, we're talking about how they're eating. Yep.
Okay, so they learn how to eat from their parents. Their parents show them what different types of trees they should be eating, and they show them how to use their teeth and their hands to hold on to those different pieces of browse and aquatic vegetation. And then if we look at the skull again, we can look at the teeth. So if you look away from the front and you look further back at their molars, they're very flat. And those are for grinding plants. So again, these animals are herbivores. They're only eating plants. They don't eat any meat. So their teeth are designed for helping them grind up those tough plant bits at the backs of their mouths. And like other rodents, they need to chew almost constantly because their teeth are always growing. And their teeth can actually grow so long that they grow into the top or bottom of their mouths. So they have to constantly be chewing to wear down their teeth so that they stay healthy and don't get some kind of injury to their mouths from their teeth growing too long. Some other special features about beavers that help them live in water is their fur. So this is a beaver pelt, and they have 2 layers of fur. They have one that's for warmth and one that's for waterproofing. So this top layer is kind of a little bit more like wiry, and this is for waterproofing. And then underneath is a fluffier, downy layer, and that's going to help insulate and keep them warm. And they learn from their parents how to take care of this fur. They have to groom and care for their fur very well so that it keeps that waterproof outer oil. So they actually have these little glands at the bottoms of their tails. And these glands secrete an oil that they use to cover their fur and make it waterproof. So it's kind of like a conditioner that covers their fur. And they do it very similar to how a house cat might groom themselves. So they're going to use their hands and they're going to take the oils and cover their fur with that oil to keep it nice and waterproof and conditioned for their wetland habitats. We'll also look at some beaver feet.
Just gonna pause you there for a second. It's doing it again. Sorry.
Okay.
All right, and we're back. Okay, so we just learned about the fur.
Okay. Yeah, we're sort of at the very outer edge of the wildlife park right now, so our service might be a little in and out, but thank you for being patient with us. So we looked at the fur, now we're gonna look at some beaver feet. So these are rubber molds of what a beaver foot would look like. So this is the back foot, and then this is a front foot. So this bigger back foot, you can see they have these webbed toes, and that is for swimming. And then their front foot isn't webbed, it's more like a hand, and that's for carrying and grabbing their browse and food through the water and for carrying that wood for building and everything too. Another thing that beavers have is a protective lens over their eyes. Oh, is this video working? So this is a video of that same baby beaver that we saw earlier. And this kind of shows how they use their hands to hold on to the browse and bring it to their mouths when they're eating. So very different than their back feet that are webbed and large that they use like paddles for swimming through the water. And then another physical adaptation that they have is a special lens that covers their eyes, a membrane, and it's like goggles for when they're swimming. So kind of like we have sunglasses or we could wear goggles to protect our eyes. They have those built in. They also can pinch their nose shut when they're underwater, so they could stay under longer for a very long time. And they have special ear flaps that they can also close. These are all adaptations that help them live in the water. Another behavior that we talked about was that tail slapping behavior. And that is an alert system. So they slap the water and they also use their tail for balance when they are swimming and when they sit back on their hind legs. So you can see in this picture that very long kind of paddle-like tail. So it's going to be really, really good for swimming. It's like a rudder through the water and maneuvering through the water, and also for balancing when they're sitting and eating. Another thing that we'll look at is this. Again, this is rubber, so this is a replica of what it would look like. This is beaver scat. So this is their poop. And beavers use this to mark their territory. So they leave this
your
around.
beaver behind you would like to show you that this is her territory right now.
Oh, yeah. So this is a female beaver. She's the only beaver here at the park. And you can see too, she's using her hands. She has some maple leaves that she's eating. And she holds them really tightly in her hand and folds them up. And she eats them very, very quickly. I think one of her favorite things to do is to eat.
Oh, you could see her tail really well there. That was nice.
She's really showing off. So I started to talk about too how beavers build. So we'll talk a little bit more about their building behaviors and how they do that. So the first thing we'll talk about is a beaver lodge. So the beaver lodge is the beaver's home. And they'll establish an entirely new area for their lodges, or they'll take over old or abandoned lodges and areas that have regrowth. And they learn to build when they're very young. Again, when they do this with their parents, they live in these family units, and there's usually a 1-year-old kit, the new kits, and then the parents. So there's a couple different generations that live together at one time. And they learn what to use for building, chewing, and eating. And these beaver lodges are more than a pile of sticks. It's not just wood that they use for building. They'll also use stones and rocks, and they'll use mud from the bottom to form a very strong base, and it helps seal up their lodges to keep them warm and comfortable inside. And these lodges sometimes are even home for other small creatures. Sometimes snakes, frogs, mice, and even muskrats will actually live in these lodges with the beavers. The other thing that beavers build are their beaver dams. And they don't live in these beaver dams. The beaver dam is for water control. So this changes the flow of water. So beavers are best at surviving in water or right near the water. So they want to build these dams so that they can expand their habitat and create habitat for other animals also. I have a couple different beaver chews. So this is an example of a piece of wood that a beaver would take down. So this end, you can see, sorry, this sun's kind of glaring on it. If I can, there we go. So on this end, you can see these teeth marks. So those are from a beaver gnawing down on the end of this to take down the tree. And then they strip the bark and everything and twigs and leaves, and they'll eat that part. And then the dense wood part, they don't eat. They save that for building their lodges and dams. And this is one from the beaver behind us.
We froze again, Jade.
Oh.
Just 1 second. Oh, there we go. We're back. Let me fix the video. There we go. There we go.
Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. So then this is a beaver chew from the enclosure here behind me. So this is one that we have given her, and she stripped all the bark off of this and all the twigs and leaves. And then she uses the rest of this to try and dam up the areas of her enclosure where we have running water. So again, they decide where to build based on what they hear. So they hear that running water, and that's where they know where to build these dams. So beavers don't have very good eyesight. They rely on their hearing for their survival and for knowing where to build their dams. And they'll flood that area to make more habitat for beavers and other animals. It collects water for times of drought also. And something that makes beavers especially important is that they are a keystone species. So this means that they're an especially important species and can greatly affect other wildlife. So they're one of very few animals that can completely change a habitat, and other animals and people can rely on that for food, for water, and shelter. And without beavers, the landscape would be drastically different. Beavers can even make an oasis in a desert. We've known of beavers that will live in desert habitats, and they'll find the smallest amount of water and create it into a very, very green oasis. And do you know what other types of animals might benefit from a beaver creating a wetland? There's a number of different animals. We'll have different frogs and turtles, different birds here in Maine too, different waterfowl, different raptors that rely on that area. And also our moose here in Maine, they like these aquatic habitats where they can go and eat the different aquatic plants that are in there. So there's all different animals that without the beaver expanding these wetlands, they also rely on those habitats the beavers help create. And beavers move best in the water, so they need to be near that water as much as possible. So Miriam is out now, the beaver here at the park. She is busy during the day. And this is interesting because beavers are actually usually more active in the evenings or in the very early morning or just before it gets dark. So they're nocturnal and they're crepuscular because they're active not during like the middle of the day. But here at the park, she's out because she has adjusted to our schedule. So she is up and about when we are around. That's when she's used to getting attention and getting fed and getting different enrichment and browse. So her schedule is a little bit different than a wild beaver's would be. And beavers have always served a number of different economic and also historical value. So for over 200 years, people have valued the beaver for their fur and their oil gland. So we've used that fur for things like felt hats, especially a long time ago when people first discovered that these pelts were very, very soft and very warm. They would use those pelts and sell them for different fashion and for hats. The oil was used in fancy perfumes for this musky smell that it has. And it was even used in vanilla flavoring. Nowadays, we have a plant-based substitute that is more widely used for that vanilla flavoring and for different perfumes, and that is called castor seed. And these oils are also used when we're setting traps for other fur bearers. And beavers are still hunted for use, but the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife regulates and monitors the beaver population, as well as regulates and monitors hunting and trapping. So we've gone over a lot of different beaver facts about their adaptations, and I'd love to answer any questions if any questions have come in about beavers.
Yes, we have a question of, do beavers have a favorite type of tree?
So the question was, do beavers have a favorite type of tree? Our experience here at the park is her favorites are maple, aspen, and popple. And out in the wild, if a forest area has those similar trees, it's very popular for beavers. So if you're out around a pond and you see those trees have been harvested and taken down, and you see those nubs like this that have these teeth marks, it's a good sign that that's a very popular spot, and you probably have a beaver family or two living in that area. So maple, popple, aspen are some of their favorites.
Great. And another question is, how long do the beaver young stay with their parents?
So the beaver young stay with their parents until they reach sexual maturity, and that's usually about 2 years old. So they spend the first 2 years with their families, and then they'll go off to start families of their own once they have reached sexual maturity and have all that knowledge and skills that they need to go start their own families.
All right, that's it we have for questions. If you have any more questions, please feel free to write them in the chat or send us an email later.
Yes, thank you for those questions. I do have an activity that I can suggest that goes along with some of the things we've learned about beavers today. And it is to build your own beaver dam at home. So this, I have a Tupperware container, and then I used mud, but you could also use Play-Doh or salt dough. And then you can use different sticks and rocks, and you'll also need some water. So I just have a bottle of water here, and you can test your beaver dam after you've built it in its container by pouring water in one side of it and seeing how long.
Again, just a second. Oh.
All right, are we good?
We're good. Let's see that demonstration again.
Okay, so this is the one that I built. I used mud and some sticks here. And then I'm going to take the water and pour it in 1/2 and see how long it takes to get through to the other side. So that's a really fun activity to do at home. And again, you can use mud, Play-Doh, or different salt dough recipes you can probably find online, and the container with different things you just find in your yard, and try and build your own beaver dam. So as long as you don't have any other questions that have come through, I want to thank you all for joining us today. Hopefully you got to see the beaver here at the park. She came over here for a little while, and I know she was swimming around. And I just want to say thank you, and I hope you had fun learning about Maine's busy beavers. You can go to mefishwildlife.com and the mainewildlifepark.com to get different information about the department, the park, and also different activities and resources to do at home. And all of our recordings and future virtual tours can be found at mefishwildlife.com as well. So thank you all again, and have a great day.